We'll hold the we'll hold the photos for a minute, Latte.
Mhm.
Normally I do, I love your tiny PowerPoint, Suman. Is that like a little tiny thing we can't see? Or it's a short one, I take it. But I didn't, normally I do a PowerPoint, but I don't know. I think that part of the, um, this going back to a Zoom, I'm kind of out of the habit, a Zoom, and just so everybody knows, the three of us on this committee had decided in the future years we're going to try to sort of do this regularly, have one in a home in the fall as a potluck, and then one in the spring on Zoom, because it is easier, things get busy in the spring, easier for more people to attend, and actually that it allows for more sharing of these kinds of video clips and things. So, we'll try to suit our topics that we designate to whether it's an in-person or an online meeting in future. Um, and we were, I didn't know. First, I'd ask how many of you know who Camille Claudel is? Is everybody? Not everybody. I will. So just for this talk, I bought the exhibit book. Oh, wow, you can't really see it. Isn't that
That's
weird? Oh,
amazing.
because it's doing my face. That's funny. My Zoom background, I guess. Anyway, um, she was a French artist born, as I said, in 1860. I'm going to tell you first her life story and why I wanted to see this exhibit, um, and then we'll look at the pictures after that, and then we'll watch the clips about the movies. Um, she, I've always had an interest in the complications for women artists and their romantic relationships that I mean, Frida Kahlo and Diego Rivera, the Georgia O'Keeffe and Stiglitz, the de Koonings, Cat. I keep
Captain
getting a
Marvel.
spotlight. Oh, that's
Yeah,
the
I'm
video.
doing that.
I'm sorry for the recording. It's very hard for me to. Okay, you'll clip all this off on the editing. Um, at any rate, it's so often that is it Lee Krasn with Jackson Pollock? I mean, uh, Picasso. There were multiple women artists who became involved with them and suffered tremendously. And so often, from it can decimate the woman's own career. Not always. I would think Georgia O'Keeffe is a excellent example, who, by the way, did move to the other side of the country from her husband to establish her artistic independence. So a lesson to be learned there, I guess. But Camille Claudel has a particularly sort of tragic story, which I did not know as much about. I had heard of her and had this vague idea, oh, she was a sculptor who knew Rodin and who did work around the time of Rodin. And it, it was, I remembered, I guess, years ago visiting the Rodin Museum, and that's probably where I first came across her name. And in fact, there is a room devoted to her work in his museum, which he made arrangements for before he died,
I didn't know if you needed the remote.
at the request of somebody. I'm not sure who it was, um, but she grew up in a family kind of in the suburbs of Paris, and early on had a huge interest in art, and there were many sculptors in that area, and so I guess that's what led her into becoming particularly interested in sculpture. And they moved to Paris, I think in part to help her pursue this interest, although her mother was not a fan of this. um, and she became one of the, they were called students, basically the workers in Rodin's atelier at the time. He was 20 years older, world renowned, had radicalized sculpture from its traditional Greek and Roman kind of classic format, and was basically a colossus in the art world. And he early on found her very inspirational, both herself and her work, and wanted a relationship with her, which she refused at first. She did not want. She was very committed to her work and working for him as a teacher. But I guess changed her mind about that and began to travel with him. He had a lifetime companion woman, not an artist, that he never married until a week before she died, when they were both quite elderly for estate reasons or something, named Rose Burdett or something like that. And he had many, many affairs, like most male artists, and never left this woman. But Camille Claudel, believed, and he led her to believe. In fact, he even signed a contract that she insisted upon at some point, that he would leave Rose and marry her and take her. There was some place she wanted to go to. And I mean, it was a unique sort of document. But he did not deliver on that. So she was involved with him. She began working in his studio in 1880 and broke off the relationship, finally realizing he was never going to deliver on his promises in 1898. So 8 years she was working with him, for him. He was doing all he could to promote her as an artist. And she was widely recognized as a great sculptor, promising sculptor. And the connection certainly helped with that on the one hand. But on the other, as critics of the time and since, art historians have said, Rodin, the problem for any sculptor in that time period was Rodin, because he so dominated the field and the expectations of what a sculpture should be and what they should produce, that everybody had to find a way to define themselves against, or end up just one of his disciples. As one critic said, he didn't have students, he had disciples. They were, working in his shop, producing the work according to his instructions, and expected to do work like his, promote his theory of sculpture. So that was her lover. Her brother, Paul Claudel, became a famous poet and diplomat for France, and was widely regarded and respected in that category, and was also a very religious man, or had a conversion, I guess, at a certain point in his life, and became very religious. So she was kind of in the middle of these two alpha men while she tried to become something no woman had ever been, which was a sculptor in the, let's call it the grand tradition, right? The kind who gets big commissions from nations and cities and produces big, not little, tiny sculptures, right? Big works of art. She did amazing work, and she worked very hard. But the stresses, her relationship with Rodin caused her mother to reject her as her daughter, essentially. And she ceased, other than her father and her brother, her mother and her sister would have nothing to do with her. It was very shameful to be the lover of a married man in their eyes. They were very much regarded themselves as upper class in the rural or provincial town they had come from and returned to from Paris. And she, once she left Rodin, had a difficult time getting commissions, getting work. And so financially, her father and her brother would send her money, but her circumstances became more and more difficult, and she began to, she basically fell apart under the mental strain. I think she had always been very intense, and she began to become more and more so until finally her father died, and the family did not tell her about his death. But the day after the funeral, her brother had a doctor sign, evidently anybody could do this in the law in France, and order that she needed to be committed to an asylum. And they showed up 3 days later at the apartment she was living in Paris and dragged her out physically. And basically, she was confined for the rest of her life, 30 years in an asylum. So it's quite a dramatic and sad story, especially when you see the quality of her work. And the critics, I read 2 books in the last week, skimming them, I guess, but one was by a white male classic French art historian whose name I'm blanking on, called Rodin and Claude. He was a Rodin scholar, and he wrote this book under assignment or something from a press, and it was the most critical. I mean, he just like, oh, she produced this work 3 years before, a similar work by Rodin, but she must have seen the one in his shop, and that's why she produced it earlier, not why he produced one later. I mean, it was just that patent that everything she did was attributed to Rodin's influence over her. And then I read another one by a woman that was almost the opposite, which was basically saying, and I have no idea if anybody does know much about these artists, I'll look forward to hearing about that, that Rodin, even though he was this existing colossus, he always struggled for new ideas, and that his work was just exploded in the 8 years that they were working together, and that a lot of what he did could be attributed to her ideas. And certainly when you see the nature of her work at that time and after, there was an argument for that. On the other hand, as her circumstances became more straitened and things in the last years before she was dragged off to the asylum, she was working in small scale, right, for economic reasons, if nothing else, and the works are nowhere near as dramatic. And also, from the first time I heard this story, I had to wonder how much, rather, she was committed by the family. It was very clear that the father, while he was alive, the family could not act to commit her. I guess he protected her. But as soon as he was out of the picture, the mother and sister, who, by the way, is my understanding, got her inheritance by having her committed, although funds would be used to support her there. And the hospital several times recommended her release, and the mother would not have her return to the home. And Paul, her brother, as you'll see probably in the movie clip I'm going to show, he loved her and visited her whenever he could, but he traveled the world a lot. But it isn't clear what his perspective was. He certainly became a big promoter of her, but he hated Rodin. Everybody in the family hated Rodin and what he had done to Camille. They regarded her mental state as his fault. Okay, so I guess let's look briefly, Latte, at the pictures that I had sent you, if you can share them. This, by the way, maybe I can get it in the spot. Does it show up? Oh, yeah. So this is one of her most famous works. And since my son was just a choreographer for the Stanford Viennese Waltz that they do every year, I had to buy this little refrigerator magnet. It's called the Waltz, but this is a life-size sculpture, and it's just incredible and beautiful, and it's certainly regarded as her most famous and successful work. Lotte, did you get the photos I sent? Oh, yes.
This one?
Yes.
Can you see it?
Oh, I didn't mean to send you the recipe photo.
I will scroll.
This was Claudine's favorite meal.
Really?
Okay, so wait, is there a way to show them one at a time? Oh, I guess you have to
I think
download them.
yeah, like this one.
Oh,
Yeah.
okay, that's great. Okay, so this is just the cover of the book that I was holding up, and this shows a little bit of, you know, again, these are life-size figures, and the beauty with which she captured the feel of a waltz, and the bodies is wonderful to me. Okay, the next one. So these weren't in any particular order. I apologize, I've had a lot going on. I normally do things in a more orderly fashion. This one is called Muir. I think it's the old age, basically, is what it's about. And it, on the one hand, and again, this is life size, bigger than life size, and the power is just amazing. So on the one hand, this is a human male who looks a little bit like Rodin, you notice, without the beard. And this is youth, right? And this is death or old age, right? That's the classic interpretation, but it's also regarded as a very expressive autobiographical, that when Camille or Claudel was, you know, trying to get Rodin to leave his lifetime older companion, and couldn't, right? So she's clinging, imploring. What, just in all the reading I've done, I'll point out some of the things that, you know, Rodin also is amazing with bodies, but his tend to be more in a form of stasis rather than moving. And his, when there's more than one figure, they tend to be very close together. She was unique in doing sculptures where they're more spread apart, and balancing and having a sense of movement in the works, which you see with a lot of these, the like the wings or the flowing garments from the old age figure. And again, I do, it's the show is at the Getty till the 21st. If you get a chance to go to LA and go, I highly recommend it. Okay, next one. And this one, which she did after her relationship, and I'm sorry I didn't get the feet in the photo, is called Clotho, who's, I guess, a goddess of fate, right? It's just so graphic. And, you know, many critics, I think, have start to see her, her mental state starting to be pretty dark. And but again, you see, I think Rodin was so, she had a more of a tendency to adopt sort of the Rodin-esque style, nude bodies and very rugged, rustic, rough hewn figures, but also with classic modeling technique that he didn't do as much of, I think. Okay, go on. This is just, the waltz was produced in, I'm sorry, that's not part of the waltz up there, that's my finger, in marble. Also, she was very good with marble, Rodin was not, but cast into bronze, this version, you know, there are 3 or 4 different forms of it. Okay, the next picture. This is one she did again after her relationship with Rodin. It's called The Flute Player. The woman is playing the flute. Actually, the picture, I wish I had one from a different angle. And again, partly, you know, Rodin's figures were all stark naked. Um, when Claudel did naked figures as a woman sculpture, the purchasers would, and the state, like the waltz was a commission, I believe, for the state, insisted on clothing. And so her solution to that was these sort of flowing garments. But again, you see it has both a very eerie and unique form, and yet very classically beautiful molded. She did lots of busts, which I didn't take many pictures of. She was really gifted with faces and heads, hands and feet. Go on to the next one. This is one of the faces that, I forgot what this is called. It was interesting. She did it psalm, so like prayer. This was again after she had ended the relationship with Rodin, and it reflects somewhat her state of mind. And if you go, I think the next photo is oh, that was just some notes. You can skip that. That's her bust that she did of Rodin, which was widely regarded as a wonderful work of art. She did that while they were involved. And the next photo is trying to get to, okay, this is a Rodin sculpture. Many of you know The Thinker, right? That's his famous sculpture, the man totally carved, his hand. This sculpture was called Thought. And some critics have said that the one that she did, Psalm, after ending the relationship, was drawing on this somewhat. Maybe it was but the other thing about this is just so, again, it was like they were carving their relationship. They both did, and particularly Rodin did many, you know, the kiss, that's a famous one, many erotic sculptures that you feel like were just capturing their passion for each other. And this certainly was capturing the dark side that Camille often, as she tried to get Rodin to live up to the promises he had made her, that he would leave his longtime mistress and marry her, and things, that the increasing sort of cloud she worked and lived under. Next picture. So this is called Crouching Woman, and it turns out that this was one of the pieces that the Getty purchased recently. There's only about 10 of her works in the United States. That's another reason why if you get a chance to see this show. And a museum in Chicago and the Getty have most of them. So this exhibit was at Chicago and now it's here. And this work was done like 8 years, 5 or 8 years, I believe, if my chronology was right, before she even went to work for Rodin. Just in case you're wondering like what she was capable of before she began to study with him. Okay, next picture. Oh, and this is one of the most famous photographs of her, just showing how this was what she looked like at the time she went to work for Rodin. She was 18 or 19 years old, a very intense woman, young woman committed to her art. There's also, nobody seems to, I didn't find definitive facts or history on it. There's a sense that there were 1 or 2 pregnancies and abortions that she had to go through. I mean, again, for women in that, it just is such a tragic story. You would almost think that if you want to be a female artist, particularly before birth control, you probably should take a vow of celibacy. You'd have a better shot at a fulfilling career, which isn't really fair. Was that all that I sent I think, Latte. Was that the
Yeah.
last picture?
And then you sent 2 video clips.
Right. Okay. So then I I have only watched one of these movies, but I know that Suman has watched the other one. And so I plan to watch the other, but I'm kind of so mad at Rodin before even seeing the movie. I'm putting it off. The one made in 1988 is about her relationship with Rodin and her life.
Can you
Uh,
see it?
yes, let's watch
Okay,
that
let's see.
first, and then
Okay,
we'll,
but this one is in French, and I didn't find any subtitles.
oh,
So I can just play a little bit, but
oh, okay. Yes, just to give you a
yeah.
sense of how it's portrayed.
With so many choices on Booking.com, there are so
Sorry.
many Tina Feys I could be. So I
Uh,
hired body doubles to help me.
Oh,
That's interesting. I thought I had seen it in English, but
can
I
you
guess
see the full screen?
yes, I can.
C'est saisissant. Hein.
And the
C'est
noise?
cette chimie. Clearly,
Yeah.
l'artiste n'a qu'à en croire ses yeux.
Oh, you know what? But I'm not seeing the movie. I'm just seeing.
It's stuck. Yeah, it's stuck. We can hear it, but we can't see it anymore.
Oh, what?
Now we can.
Oh, I leave it like in a smaller,
Yeah, that's
Ah,
what
okay. Like now?
that's good.
That movie is just intense and amazing.
Je veux Camille
Why
à
don't
Paris.
you tell us about it? What we watched?
Nuit comme jour, elle peut tout travailler, de la boue à la pièce. C'est la plus grande marbrière que j'ai jamais eue.
J'ai l'impression que depuis que tu connais Monsieur Rodin, tu ne travailles plus du tout pour toi-même.
Ce n'est pas vrai. Il est plus préoccupé de mon avenir que moi. J'ai appris à travailler plus vite avec lui.
Ma fille n'a pas attendu de rencontrer Monsieur Rodin pour exister.
Tu cherches la douleur. Tu t'enivres de douleur. Tu la fabriques, la douleur.
Mais tu m'as tout volé! Tout! Ma jeunesse, mon travail, tout! Mademoiselle Claudel, l'élève de Rodin, Mademoiselle Claudel fait du Rodin, Mademoiselle Claudel ramasse les miettes du maître! Bravo!
Mademoiselle Claudel est désormais un maître.
So the scene of the smashing sculptures, I forgot to mention that this was part of what in her last few years, she was reduced to living in a tiny apartment, and she had become convinced that Rodin and was trying to steal her work and was sending agents to poison her. And she would work hard all year and then destroy a lot of what she had made. She wrote her brother that her work was living the life of roses, which I thought was an incredibly poetic image of clearly how she was perceiving it, but it might have been her paranoia too that Rodin would manage to steal her work somehow. So she would create it and do it and then destroy it. And this was some of the stuff that factored into the wanting to imprison her in an asylum or protect her as well. And then the second clip is the
Jody?
Yeah.
Jody, Alan raised her hand.
oh go.
Alan?
Right. I actually take a lot of art history classes at Kenyatta College with Denise Erickson, and she's really fabulous. And we did learn about Rodin, and I did a paper on Rodin. And what we haven't really talked about is how Catholicism affected him, his life, and his work. He was very much guided by Catholicism and the exploration of God. And in the beginning, before he became a sculptor, he tried to join the Franciscan monks because he wanted to become a monk. And the order realized that his talents didn't lie in being a monk, but rather in being an artist. And the head of the Franciscan order then recommended to him that he leave the order. He actually joined the order, leave the order and become an artist instead of a monk. And that kind of set him on his path. but Catholicism was a very important element of his life. And even though he had this longtime mistress, he could have viewed her as a marriage. I don't know. And then, guided by Catholicism, he wasn't, able to so-called divorce her in order to start this relationship with
He should
Claudia.
have not made promises then, right?
What?
Well,
He
first
should
of all, he did start and they lived and traveled together for 8 years.
Yeah, I'm just
constantly.
saying that Catholicism always guided his life and his artwork. He never
Well,
left.
not in regard to having that relationship with Camille Claudel.
And he did
Like,
sign, he did sign that agreement to leave Rosie. So that was not very Catholic of him.
Yeah, I was raised Catholic, and I know that extramarital sex, or if you regard his relationship and just extramarital sex at all, was a sin. And if you regard his mistress as a marriage to him, that would have been doubly, betrayal. So I also, I will look into that. It's an interesting perspective because it's hard to imagine that his work, although he did The Gates of Hell, he was working on that for 37 years. So yes, he was a conflicted person. But I am focusing on Camille Claudel, and her life was kind of destroyed by her interactions with him. Who knows what, that's a counterintuitive, right? Counterfactual. Who knows what her life would have been. But we'll go ahead and watch the second clip, and then we will open it to discussion. There's a lot to discuss here. This movie focuses on her in the asylum and her days, and it's very much a picture of, she's waiting for her brother to visit and she's hoping she'll be released. It's a few days.
Sorry.
It's okay.
Je suis ici sans savoir pourquoi.
Votre frère, M. Paul Claudel, vient vous rendre visite.
C'est Rodin qui détient M. Griff. C'est Rodin qui s'est servi d'eux pour s'emparer de mon atelier. Alléluia! Alléluia! Alléluia!
Camille.
So that one is, did you see that one, Simone?
No, I've only seen the one in French with subtitles, and it wrecked me. That film wrecked me. It was just so heartbreaking, and looks like this one's going to be amazing too. And I saw it, I think I must have seen it in 1990, the year I got married. The movie came out in 1988, but in India we're always behind. And Isabella Adjani did such an amazing job. And then I read up a little more about her. And back in the day, of course, we didn't have internet and stuff. So recently, even I've been getting all those ads also about the Getty Museum. And I've been like seeing more of that and reliving all of that. I didn't have the chance to watch the movie again. But yeah, I have to say, like, of course, there's two sides to everything. But in the case of Camille Claudel, it was to me very obvious that that Rodin couldn't stand the fact that she was better than he was in many things. She sculpted most of the hands and legs of his sculptures because he wasn't as good as she was. She, loved him passionately. She was younger and in a very vulnerable position. He had this power over her and he took full advantage. And like you said, unfortunately, and I'm sure we'll hear more about how women and their art get completely decimated when they're in competition with male, and especially among those who are their own partners. So that's all I want to say, that her story is just incredibly heartbreaking.
Yes, it is one of and theirs was particularly, I think, rough because he was an accomplished Colossus sculptor, and that was exactly the field. I mean, I think some of the other artist stories that are less intense, there wasn't such an age difference and experience difference, and maybe they were in different media. So that everything just, and the time during which she was trying to live a life that the church was a big part of life for everybody. That was why her mother rejected her and, cast her out from the family.
It would be much worse, yes.
Yeah. So did the movie show her years in the asylum, Suman?
I saw it back in 1990. I know that they did show her in the asylum, as being in the asylum. I remember the scene when she gets, after she leaves Rodin, she gets like really crazy and she keeps believing that he's out there to get her, which I don't blame her for doing that because he stole a lot from her. I can't really I don't even remember how the movie ended, unfortunately. I have to watch it again. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. But if you just think of Jackson Pollock and Lee Krasnick, right? Even in their case, Lee Krasno, I think, right? Lee Krasno, even in her case, she was the one who really lifted him up and made everyone know how amazing he was, and she got completely consumed and subsumed by his work, and she wasn't taken seriously. And it's just this ongoing story, which is kind of heartbreaking, and hopefully something will change, we hope. Yeah.
Yes. And de Kooning as well, Elaine de Kooning.
Yes.
Voted, she was the more well-known, sort of like Joan Baez and Bob Dylan, the more well-known artist at the time, and then falling in love with this young, not established artist and promoting him led to her being sidelined for many.
Right. She was an incredible writer too. I think she wrote many art pieces in Art News or ArtNet or whatever that thing was. Elaine did, and wrote about Willem de Kooning. And somehow she just disappeared. It's sad.
She is. I mean, a lot of these female artists are being promoted again, and that's why we're hearing of them, fortunately.
Yeah, the 9th Street Women, we have to read that book.
Yes,
yes.
That was one of the early
somebody presented me that book a few years ago. I still didn't manage. I started to read, but I was interested in other.
You have to read it. It has Helen Franklin Paulo. It has Elaine de Kooning.
But it's a story from different people gathered together. It's not art criticism type of writing, but it's a biography. How this woman stand behind their famous male artist, and
it does
also about the difficulty of that situation. Probably, as I understand.
Right. But the book does focus on what is abstract expressionism and how it was the women who were actually way up there compared to the men. But as soon as it got monetized, then suddenly the women were cast aside and the men came to the forefront. So that book was one of, I love that book. Yeah, one of my, I think I read it maybe 2 or 3 years ago. It's beautiful.
Well, there was a group in the museum somewhere that did it. I
read it with them. Yes.
Yeah, they did it and had 2 different book groups. I only heard about it when it was done, but I would have tried to do that. It's a book, it's on my list, but it's a big book.
We can do it. We can do it in parts. Because when I ordered the book, I was like, I want to do this book. And then the book came with this tome, and I was like, oh my God. But luckily, it was over many months, and so it was possible.
Okay, so that's that. Does anybody else have any reactions or thoughts they want to share or knowledge about Rodin or?
No, I just want to say that I read the book. I don't remember. It was very weird because my father-in-law presented me many years ago that book. It was translated to my native language in Ukraine, and well, at that time I didn't take it so much tragically. But I mean that was quite strange that to read that book. I don't know. I just like I don't want to investigate in that emotional, how should I say, it's pretty hard, yeah, to think about that. But I count that as an example if I give that such book to someone, especially to some young woman, I would probably like present my opinion and why you should read this, because don't make such mistakes as this woman make.
Mm-hmm.
So you're saying you read a book about Camille Claudel?
And Rodin.
Yeah,
it was her, but it was mostly consisted in their relation, about their relation period, and then very shortly come after her decline of destruction. So.
Yeah, I'm sure there's a lot of books out there. But yes, it is a very tragic story, and she did make amazing art. I don't know as much, Suman, about, by the time I read the male Rodin critic and the feminist Claudel, I just thought, well, I'd have to read a lot more before I could even draw any conclusions about who affected whose work the more. What was clear was that this was a very intense involvement that inspired both of them to incredible creativity, but because of the mores of the time and because of his longstanding commitment to the other woman, it cratered, and maybe the seeds of her insanity were already in her. There's that is also not clear.
She would definitely have, I mean, for want of a better phrase, I don't think that's the right phrase, but like a genetic disposition, so to speak, as in she was someone who was very sensitive, someone who was in some ways obsessive, whether it was about her art or her relationship. So yeah, she would have been inclined to that, and then he was the trigger. And similarly, even as far as Rodin's concerned, I did feel like he was stuck. Like for 30 years, he only did The Gates of Hell. And granted, it was a larger than life thing, and he did everything else. But I somehow think about Picasso, who was so afraid of getting stuck. He never, ever wanted to do the same thing forever. And Rodin was the opposite.
Yes, there is some sense. That's a good thing to end on, that he tried desperately to get her to come back. He didn't leave Rose, but other than that, and for years he sent her money, and he tried to promote her work, which I think attests to his feeling guilty about all that had befallen her because of the involvement with him. So I mean, I don't think he was a total bad guy. And there was definitely a sense that his work, he may have wanted her back desperately because he needed her to inspire him and to provide him with ideas as well. But this is making me think of a list to add for future topics: art and madness. Because when you said
that's a good one.
She had the seeds already in her. Yes, and isn't that true of so many artists, right? Kind of person who would commit their life against all self-interest, and like Van Gogh and stuff, right? Who never even sold a painting really while he was alive, you know, and keep working away when nobody in the world is telling you to keep doing this, you know. There's a thin line between inspiration and madness.
Yeah, and hint, you might hear a little bit more about Art and Madness.
Okay, so we decided that Lilio is next, and then Latte, right?
Yeah. Also, can we have some time limits? I have a hard stop at 5:30. I have a commission meeting that I have to go in person. So I can stay till 5:30 for certain. I'm sure it'll be done by then, but just putting it up.
I'm sorry, and I went on much longer than I would normally since we have fewer presenters this time, and I had read all the books recently, so all the facts were in my mind. I don't normally talk that long.
It was also needed for the first one, I think. You know, the chat off. Yeah.
Okay, Lillian.
Yeah, I just want to ask, Art and Madness, is it a book of some author of the book, or?
No, I'm just, we're constantly sort of keeping and anybody's welcome to suggest topics as well, kind of a list of what could be future study group topics. And that just seemed like, oh, that would be interesting.
Yeah.
I can share my screen, right?
Yeah, you can. You should be able to.
Okay. I don't know how to close this. Do you see everyone?
That's beautiful.
Yeah. So this was a movie I chose on about the artist, Scottish artist. His name is James Morrison, and I don't prepare very good structure where I will be talking, and so the movie, I expected like it a little bit more more biographical movie. It definitely like it's documentary movie, and they did amazing work in how they show the design of movies. So they have a lot of like a how they call that aero video from drones, and it's beautiful landscapes, seashores, Scottish landscapes, and it's a music, their traditional music with the Celtic traditions, and it's like a calm talk from artist, from somebody from his friends, and somebody from art galleries talk about him, and it's kind of like a little bit boring to watch. I expected it like it be more like not dramatic, but kind of dynamic. But since I think that the kind of more like landscape is not more about narrative even. It's like more about contemplation, right? And it's like a state of mind when you stop a little bit and have a peace time to observe, to relax. And so this artist is one second. So it's starting with some comments, with some comment that's, for example, like they choose painting in the silence of thought and the music of sight and the discipline of creation, be it to paint, compose, write, is the effort toward boldness. And I was thinking, I have a little bit jump from different ideas together because I have like more art historical approach to this, and so I'm always thinking why I'm so interested in landscape. And this is not was very inspirational towards this movie, except the really aesthetic pleasure from his work. Because if we talk from very classical, traditional requirements about landscape, it's picture square, it's beautiful, and it's sublime. And all these three components are in his work. I'll show you a little bit, jump from different. So he, the Scottish landscape, it's a lot of seashore, a lot of horizon, and a lot of sky. So I can read you just a little facts about his biography, about his life. So he was studied. He born in Glasgow, and he was studied at the Glasgow School of Art for 4 years, and then he moved to second. He first of all he lived in this area, northern part of Scotland, and later he moved to the another to this part, and bigger amount of his life he lived in they called it Duncan. No, I'm sorry. Assynt, I think it's called. Yeah, Assynt, yeah, it's Sutherland, they called it region, I think so. So his early work is look like this, and it's more like a little bit abstract, more graphical, and it doesn't have that transparency and like a watercolor transparency. It's like a more flat surfaces, but it's very graphical and very precise and very delicate. Look how he paint the branches on the trees, and this is left. I can't find the title of this work, but I definitely know that this is from his very early period, and like he do a different kind of experimentation, and this is more like abstract landscape, definitely look like to me. And this is also pretty much from more like from earlier period, and well, it's look for me like some kind of like black and white photography that then was put to the color. I don't know why, but it look like so retro. I don't know, okay, not even retro, before retro. I don't know, interesting. So he it's usually the good I think the good landscape artists do that effect, that you get amazed with the effect that you look like, it's really good. The feeling of geology of land and of different terrain is kind of also almost inborn to landscape artists, I would say. So what I found from him, he actually doesn't want to share a lot about his biography, but his wife was a historian, and she was like professor, and he also had an opportunity to teach. So he teach in how they call this. I have to write it here somewhere. So he teach in college in his region of Angus, where he lived second half of his life. I don't know, I can find the name of the college. It's college of Jordanstone, yeah, Jordanstone College of Art and Design. Sorry. The Eye of the Storm is called because I think that they put the title for this because his last 2 years his vision is declined very strongly, and he was like put it very dramatic. He take it very dramatically because he was so obsessed with painting. It was his really he like when he teach in college, he teaches like 3 days a week, 4 days a week, and then like last days of weekend he paints. And he painted, all his painting was outside, and it's actually not easy work to do that in such climate, because there is a lot of wind, there is a humidity, there is a rain often in that kind of climate, and it's kind of really, you're really dedicated and obsessed with this, you're really in love with your work, and so it also said that he actually had a very active career, and he traveled. He has a traveling scholarship to Greece. He traveled to France, Canada, and Botswana. Africa, and he also do what is unique for him. He did in his like more like a later period, but not not in his senior age. He did a journey to Arctic. He did a journey to Greenland, to a specific area of Greenland, and I think he lived there for 2 weeks or more with a couple of people, and he was painting from live, from outdoor, the Arctic landscapes. They like do that very promotional for his type of that. Nobody did that, but he did that. So it's kind of, and since everyone, there is a trend today. We do a lot of environmental studies with art and humanities, that this is very unique. And this is also like a not activism art, not a like performance, but it's his I don't know, challenge, or how to say, to go there and to paint from real, right? Not from pictures. Because it's easier even to take a picture, to take a photography, than stay and really in that weather and paint. Also, what I want to add, so there is a kind of good comments that he had a neighbor who was Catholic, and they have a little bit short conversation in this movie. And he said, "Well, Jim," he called the artist Jim. Jim, I found your painting so transcendent. I feel like I don't need to go to cathedral. And he answered, "Well, I'm also moving by a couple of few places that I paint." But he count themselves as agnostic. And agnostic is someone who doesn't refuse the religion, the faith in God, but also doesn't kind of believe that. And well, he has 2 children, and I think his older son is art historian, and he do like good promotion for him. Like, and he also have in Glasgow, some prominent Glasgow gallery. He has 25 exhibition, and his last exhibition was connected with this film. They show how they organize, what they want to show, and it was like how they call that, last exhibitions, or like they organize first when they show the whole orb of artists. I don't know that word. I'm not a gallery worker, museum worker, but that in 2019 there was his last exhibition, and they tried to build like some kind of narrative of his work, how he changed, and how to show how maybe the artist changed and what he wants to show with his work. But basically, when I look in artists, it's kind of so contradictory, because he said, this is his Arctic landscapes. It was in 1995. Is the sky, and also some docents say that when they was presenting his works in gallery, he said that, so I actually can distinct the works that was painted in real, and some works, couple of works was not painted in outside in the place, but they was overworked later in his studio. But how he paint the sky is very amazing, I think. So it just you can contemplate that, like for your calming corner in some interior.
So are you saying this is one he did in his studio, not?
I'm not sure. I think no. I think this is.
It's beautiful.
Yeah. It's like a modern day Turner even, right? Like very, I'm kind of like reminded of Turner, but obviously completely modern, different style, but that in that same vein.
Yeah, and when he lived when he studied in Glasgow, he painted like Glasgow architecture. Then he was 2 months is in Paris in one period. He painted Paris architecture in winter. And well, I would definitely not go to paint maybe in winter Paris, but in some summer and springtime. And it's a kind of that's Nordic temperament, you know, that he liked, that cold, not nomadic, but like a soulless, like silence without people. And somebody, his one work of Glasgow architecture was in a museum, Glasgow Museum, and they say, well, it's really good work, but we want to ask you to just paint a couple of people there and bicycle. And he said, well, I will not change my work under any circumstances. But it was funny when he comment this. But I don't know. And he say I have that 1 second. Why he don't paint people? I put this here somewhere. I
May I
don't
ask
yet.
a question?
Yes, yes.
Oh, I'm sorry, Ilya. What medium did he work in?
He worked in oil, and it's
Oh, I
painting.
see oils
But-
now. Oh, okay.
Yeah, but he also worked in watercolor. I'm not sure what he do more. If he do like drawings. But sometimes I think his oil painting is so graphical because it's like transparent. But this transparency is more belong to his later style, definitely.
Beautiful. Yeah, amazing work.
Where he write? I'm sorry, I just put somewhere when he explained.
So it says a people seem a kind of irrelevant to what landscape is doing, to what landscape is about.
Yes, yes.
Shows the independence of landscape to man. It was fun on the one where he did include the figures because it gave a different sense of scale.
You mean on this that I show?
Yeah.
On this, and this was
scale is different when you have the humans.
Yeah, so this was I think it was his wife asked him, and it was some kind of thematic dedicated to Second World War, and they draw the soldiers. But I don't read the whole story about this, so he doesn't do that by himself. Maybe that was like a request for him. But actually, I found from his general writing that he do a couple of portraits, he do different genres, and in his young age, in his early period, he do actually experiment, as I show. It's quite more different type of painting, and but he like I think he belonged like more to traditional landscape painting of British tradition, something like that. I don't know. Yeah, why just put So what I want to say also, if I can find the so there's something interesting of his comment that he painted. Can find that. I'll put some notes, and I can find this. So he mentioned, I do it with my words. So he mentioned that he doing it for himself because he like not discovering himself when he doing landscape, but he like I don't know what he said. So there was a period when he painted a planets, like a fantasy planets, and like a cosmos, and he said, well, this is definitely be my ideal planet or my ideal cosmic world. And I think it's something related to his landscape, that landscape is a kind of not philosophy, but a kind of state of mind, that you are more introverted person, and you more like require that loneliness and distance with people, and not because you don't like people, but I mean like it's different type of you know, like a I don't know, temperaments. And well, I can kind of understand this, but it's also, if we talk about the personality of the artist, I think he put his work and his own self how to say, self realization definitely in front, and his family was somewhere behind. It seems to me like in the way how he talked about his art and how he was desperately dedicated to the landscape painting. And also his wife died 15 years before him, and there was a period when he couldn't paint for a couple of months, and he don't know how to paint, or this loneliness of his personal world like collapsed because his spouse was not with him. Like it's kind of like you like solitude, but you also feel the grief that somebody I remember that with Wittgenstein or somebody said that if you love somebody and you will do everything to protect his peace and solitude, and maybe this woman was also like helping him to like balance his ideal world of his artistic, and it's kind of in the topic that we before talk. So this woman definitely, I think definitely like was part of his like support and his background in this. But this is my suggestion. They don't show in the movie any kind of dramatic personal biographical statements or facts. They do it like very like for I think for promotion his later landscape works, and they do a really beautiful movie. So I just want to finish, and there is a really good music there, and just I would like to turn this because there was a couple of so beautiful songs when they showed his his works, then they showed the video from the shore, from the landscape above, and then they have an animator for this movie, and they animate some kind of things. It was very interesting. So they do really good work with them from aesthetic point, from professional design point to put the movie. But the narrative was kind of like, well, we will not show you like the inner psyche or inner space of this artist, but we show you a great aesthetic contemplative piece of so you just enjoy the video, and that's all. So can I turn 1 second, if you don't, and we will finish on this YouTube. Okay, music, one song. Is it okay for you to listen? Because I really like that melody. It's kind of Celtic, and 1 second, okay. Let's start with this.
Lilia, I think it might be better if you just copy the link and then stop sharing and then share again, like your new browser. I think it will.
But you hear the music, right?
No.
No? You don't
I think you should stop share now, and then you start, and then you share your browser again.
Share my browser?
Yeah, so stop share now.
Okay, stop sharing. Okay.
And now you share your video.
In the comment?
No.
Okay, just share again. Okay, just share.
Just on YouTube. I have to do something similar too.
But I just need to start from beginning, right? Right?
That would be better. Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Aha. And if you share your video, you should enable the sound too. Sorry. Because we don't hear anything.
If it doesn't work, you can always share it with us later, the link. Sometimes the video is off until you turn it on, but I can't see it.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, I will stop this, okay? So you get this idea, and I will stop sharing my screen, okay? Is it work for you?
Yeah, I
Yes,
think Iman's idea is good that you send the link to us after. I'd like to see that last painting in your slideshow, by the way. It looked beautiful, and I didn't recall you showing
this
whatever in your slideshow, the very last one.
yeah, this is pretty like from 82 year, from 1982.
Oh, but we're not in your screen now. We're still on YouTube.
Oh, okay.
This is why I always send everything to Latte. She's a whiz. This is the clouds above the Grampians. It's very beautiful. The slides, his work is beautiful, and the slides you've put together are very beautiful selection and composition and the way you've arranged them.
Okay. Thank you. I just want to share a couple of slides also. I just read, maybe you know them, Rebecca Solnit. You know that author? Yeah, and she just, he was a couple of really brilliant essays, and he usually wrote about, he's local here, right? He usually wrote about women, gender, but he do they combine with landscape, and she has a couple of essays about landscape and the connection topic with woman and gender, and she she always talk in culture and in terms of Arcadian opposed to pastoral, I think so, and it's kind of another way to look on landscape, but I think his work is definitely like pastoral. So he did it from literature, like there's stories about culture, about what the kind of idea what represents pastoral landscape and pastoral more Aegean landscape, and Arcadian I think like more like fantasy, not real. I think his work is more like pastoral, definitely. There is nothing, a lot of drama. He actually dramatic, very dramatic clouds, very dramatic. It's dramatic mood, but it's kind of like I don't know, the feeling of North Sea and I don't know, like tradition of people that they don't move. They live in their places, and they have like I don't know, kind of more established life there, and I don't know how to explain that. Well, anyway, it's kind of very different from American experience with landscape, but I just remember looking in museum and in American landscapes. There is a lot of impressionist, American post-impressionist, luminist, and you can find great collections in what they call that? It's Sacramento Museum. Forget the words. I'm sorry.
Crocker?
Crocker Museum. They have a great collection of California landscapists, and somebody moved from Europe and somebody here, and the light, the perspective, the sun is so amazing in that landscapes, different mood, but also quite pastoral if you're driving the Vasco road. So it's right now it's really really pastoral for me. Okay, so I'm probably stop sharing that. Thank you.
Well, thank you for sharing this artist with us.
Thank you.
Yeah. Thank you, Leah.
And where were the Rebecca Solnit essays on landscape? I'd be interested. Do you know what book they're in, or?
I will just look behind. Yeah, but I can't find to find.
Well, it's also something that can be sent later. I would just be curious if you know the site. I'd love to look at.
Olivia, it's an old book, and he actually do that, like copied that from another version. This is definitely one book, As Eve Said to Serpent, and he do different essays on different artists.
Okay.
But I also like her. He has a lot of books and like a field guide to getting lost. It's beautifully right, and he do books about the desert nuclear areas where they do how they call that?
Test. Yeah.
Test. I don't remember. Yeah, that was a period of artist activists at her. Really, when she started career, it was really interesting, and it was kind of also for scholarship. Good show. Yeah. Yeah, but she's also a beautiful writer, and I just kind of sometimes a little bit. Okay. We'll probably stop. Okay. Thank you for listening.
Thank you.
Thank you,
Thank you for
Lydia.
the presentation. Thanks.
Thank you.
Should I go?
Sure.
Or is it how we have 2 presentations left, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, okay. Well, mine will be pretty short, and one of the benefits of a study group about movies is that I don't have to talk a lot myself. So I chose when I was in college, art college, I once received a DVD. I think because it was my namesake, and it was like a DVD with movies from Charlotte Reiniger, and it was all fairy tales on music, and it was just so inspirational, so beautiful. She was a German film director and creator of animation movies, but silhouette, later some with color. So I was looking for some clips of the movies that she made, but because this is a study group about movies about the artists that make the movies, I found a short movie with information about her, and then I have just a little bit of fragments, very short, about how like the making of like her real work. So it's kind of like the movie, the style of the movie is related to what she actually does, but the narrator in this movie, they used her voice, like they would interview her. I think it's old fragments. So let me see if I can share it, and please let me know if you can hear the sound, because otherwise this will be a very short presentation. So could you all see a big screen?
Yes.
Okay. Oh, sorry. One moment. Yeah.
Can hear.
Can you hear sound?
It's good.
Can you hear the sound?
Yeah.
Yes.
I had a talent to cut out things of paper with scissors very fast and so on. Me being a vain creature, I like to please, you see, and so I came into that. I remember my first shadow theater which I made. This was in school when we were having Shakespeare and English lessons and so on. So I made myself a little frame, and at home I made Romeo and Juliet and all that and played it with that. Just a little frame with the scenery. I remember my first feeling of what you could do with a puppet's movement was when Julia appeared on the balcony. Romeo was just standing there stretching out his arm, and Julia appeared and had her hand in a position. And then she would lean her chin in her hand whilst Romeo was saying how she puts her chin into her hand and etc. And there I had the feeling this was grand, that one could do that. I had a great love for the theater. I went to the theater a lot. And then I got bitten by films, you see. When I was very young, my grandmother had to go to the cinema with me all the time. They had the Méliès films there and the pantomimes. I went to 2 cinemas a day if I possibly could. So I approached that Rainer Theater and tried to go into the acting school, and at least I was near the theater. Also, I had a very bad voice, as you may well notice. And now I wanted to draw the attention of the big people on my little self. I was always standing in the wings, which we were strictly forbidden to do, and cut out the silhouettes, which were good. And there was a wonderful man, the actor Paul Wegener, and he made always films with a fantastic element. He wanted to make use of the fantastic possibilities in films, and I was absolutely tickled by that. And he said to them that silhouette girl, these silhouettes of that girl cry for movement. For heaven's sake, let her do an animated cartoon. She can make your figures movable, and we put them on a glass plate and then let it be. And these people let me do it. I made my first animation on the 12th of December 1919. It was a ballet of just a dance between 2 people, you see. It was called The Ornament of the Loving Heart. And I still have that little figure of there, and I've never made a better one. I haven't improved at all. My husband, he was an art historian, or whatever you call it. We had 42 years, I guess, quite a thing. I once met a banker, and he asked me would I do a full-length silhouette film, and this was of course an enormous temptation. And so we went out into his place, and he gave us the top of his garage as a studio, and then we went there and started on Prince Ahmed. I took the Levinas, read them very carefully, and put all the fantastic things together. You see, the things which were the sorcerer and the witch transforming each other, a tree turning into a monster, and all these fantastic things. I put them all together and then I stirred them around. had so many dreams which didn't come true. I always wanted, my dream was to make the Greek fairy stories, the Greek metamorphosis, the great fables of Persephone and this kind of thing. And I was very near to that. I nearly, I got a contract for it and it was happy as a bird. And then my husband, he fell ill and we had the feeling we can't do it. And this all fell into the water. And I don't want to do it alone. So I have to console myself. There's a certain truth in these fairy tales. Grimm's fairy tales are folklore. People say they are cruel, and so they are. His life is cruel.
Her shadows dancing. Once a small girl, now a ghost of Berlin, dancing with her shadows, light held from within.
They always blame me that I stuck to my poor little silhouettes. I should do much more interesting things, but I love my puppets.
So yeah, that's they used her design to make a movie about her, but I wanted to just show a little bit of how it was made and the complexity and like it's just if you see that, you can find many fragments on YouTube of Cinderella, Carmen, these adventures like of Prince Ahmed, and it's, yeah, if you I also like, you sometimes see the background, it's a little bit more vague, and she made use of she created a multi-plane camera. And I know like in San Francisco in the Walt Disney Museum, there is one, and they got often credited that they kind of invented it, but she also used that in her movies. And I think, can you see this one? The next. Okay, I'm not going to show everything, just a little bit. I think you can see her and how it was made. So.
There is, of course, a great deal more to it than this. For example, among the specialized techniques which may have to be employed is the possibility of the figure turning. Moving as seen before, it is first necessary to mark his position. The next step is to turn his head. Take a picture, and then gradually the limbs are turned one by one and pictures taken. He can now proceed to move in the opposite direction. Alternatively, one can cheat a little by turning the figure as another figure passes in front of him.
So this is Papageno.
Because the camera is fixed, and besides, to go too near to small figures would make their outline appear too rough, to achieve close-ups it is necessary to construct an entirely new version of the original figure. In this way, the expression of the figure may be altered in close-up. As this is a profile art, the action is composed so that the effects of distance or depth are avoided to maintain a purity of style. But these magical figures must sometimes come into the picture from nowhere. For this effect, the shape of the figure must be repeated in numerous different sizes, all numbered. Starting with nothing, the smallest of the figures is placed on the set, a shot taken, and the next in the series put in its place. Gradually, the figure will reach its destination and appear full size on the screen. This effect can be used for all kinds of transformations and appearances. One of the most important tools of
I will. So yeah, but here you see like one of her silhouette shapes. And that is her.
Amazing.
I would recommend seeing one of her movies with the music. It's just so poetic. It's incredible. That's it.
Yeah, that one, the first one was, I guess, representative of, like, that was so sweet and pretty.
The first movie, yeah, I think it was a short movie, but it was kind of like an animation movie made inspired by her. I'm a bigger fan of the original, but at the same time, it explained a lot about her life. So, and you had her voice and her narrative. So I like that one too.
That was lovely. And I love the way, like the phrases that she used was so poetic. And of course, then seeing how the animation was done, what a painstaking process, my goodness.
I just probably not part historical, but there is kind of also a tradition of paper cutting, and it's more like a folk tradition. I know Ukrainian folk tradition is amazing, and I know one artist who do like really big, really sophisticated paper cutting, like a size of curtain. But I also just it's completely different. But I just have in mind Kara Walker in her period. Maybe right now he do something else, but she also take that from, it's completely different story, but she take it from like a African American folk tradition. But it's kind of, you know, about trauma of African people, and but it's also, so when I just, I'm sorry, anyway, we'll share thoughts here. So I will share. When I just was writing about Kara Walker and her piece of, you know, silhouettes, and I found like that composition of black and white was so dramatic that she could not do like any gray. Like I don't know if here, like you see that it's completely like a very graphical. If this artist do the animation, so there is no like a kind of shade, a chromatic hues on the movies, and just interesting.
Yeah, it's black and white, and like, but I know what she also did some in color. Like she could, but she also could out.
And I just have an idea about Gestalt that they sometimes represent Gestalt, like if you look, like, you know, there is a vase, and when you look, you can see only, you know, there is a Gestalt black and white images, and that very typical was in some books about psychology, and when you look in that, you see only or vase, some kinds of vase, or you see two faces like in profile. And you can see together ways or these two faces in profile, and this is so dramatic. Some, as you say, she was about she was suffer from that period of fascism, right? She need to left the German, right? And it's also that kind of like art is subconscious, that it's kind of so divided and conflicted, like you live maybe in that kind of condition, that it's push you to do express that through some kind of features of artwork. But but I think that Kara Walker too, that for that her period was a black and white paper cutting. I mean, I can say about that, because that was another very aesthetical period, right? So just it's interesting why the artist choose this medium and why he used such features to express this medium. It's definitely something. It's kind of connecting dots, but a little bit, just a little bit. I have the suggestion. I don't put any like summary or something, like conclusion. But when you try to analyze the material, the technique, and you connect it with biography and when some other cultural condition, it gets kind of like more panoramic view sometimes. But yeah, today it doesn't. It's like, you know, you can do that in museum, but it can more like kind of research when you write some essay or yeah. Sorry.
Thank you.
Thank you. So if you don't mind, I'll go right ahead. I'm just looking at the time. So as I said, the artist that I'm covering today is Yayoi Kusama, and the movie that I saw, which is currently in Hulu, it's a biographical documentary film about her life and art, and it's called Kusama Infinity. And I'm going to just share my screen. Are you able to see?
Yes.
Perfect. So, you know, Yayoi Kusama, as I said before, she's still alive. So she was born in 1929. So currently she is 95 years old. And when this movie was made, it was back in 2018, I believe. And so, you know, she was still back then 89 years old. So I was lucky to be able to see, I don't know if any of you had a chance to go to SF MoMA, but I was able to see on December 31st. And we, long story about why we decided to go there. It was our way of also meeting my son's girlfriend's parents, and they all love art, and we were like, let's go meet. And so when I first took a look at the art, I didn't understand it at all. So I read a little bit and I found her mind-blowing. And of course, watching this movie really helped. So she's a Japanese contemporary artist, and she is mainly a conceptual artist. Her work is known for its autobiographical, psychological, even sexual content. It is very intense, even though it looks very playful. And of course, her art, you know, follows a very, very, very long trajectory. And, you know, currently she is in the best shape in her life, so to speak, psychologically speaking. So there are various connotations and interpretations of her art, and there's constant rewriting of what her art is about. So she is known not just for her paintings, but her sculpture, her installation, her poetry. She does performance art, video art, fashion, a whole lot of different things. And then because she lives in the world of today, social media also has helped her a lot. So she is known for her distinctive use of dots and infinity mirrors and vibrant colors. It explores the themes of identity, mental health, and even the interplay between self and the world. So her artistic trajectory is definitely showcases her very, you know, her world of resilience, and she's intensely creative, very obsessive, and of course she's been relentless in her pursuit of artistic vision, and also, dare I say, madness comes into play too. So let me go on to the next slide. So today, this is what she talks about her art. She says I convert the energy of light into dots of the universe, and that energy, along with love, flies into the sky. And then she goes on from there. So she was born in 1929 in Matsumoto City, which is a very small city in Japan. And she knew she wanted to be an artist from when she was 10 years old. However, her family wanted her to just marry a rich man and be a housewife, you know. And so her parents, especially her mom, were very against her style. She was, right from the beginning, she was very obsessive about dots and patterns, initially because she was a youngster And then soon it became her signature style. She said the dots made her eyes get brighter. It moved her, and she loved to draw. But her mother would come and sneak up from behind her and tear up her work. And that sense of panic and hysteria that her work is just going to be snatched away and taken, it kind of informs her art making process too. And all this is very beautifully depicted in the film. She always works very furiously and obsessively to this day, as if wanting to complete all her work before it's torn away from her. So there was definitely family dysfunctional issues which traumatized her. The movie talks about what, and I won't go into that because I would love for you to watch that movie, and it's 75 minutes long. Other experiences also traumatized her. So her family owned a wholesale flower seed business for the entire region that also involved fields of flowers, etc. And she talks about being in a field full of flowers, and then something traumatic happened, and she just felt like she was being consumed by the flowers surrounding her. So let me go on to the next one. Yeah, and this is where I said a little bit. So you can see a little bit of her art, etc. So literally her art, a lot of her art is about recreating that experience of being consumed by nature surrounding her. So of being lost into the physical environment, of losing her selfhood in the space that's moving rapidly and expanding rapidly. And then this is my own interpretation, and I almost feel like she understands the universe and space and like physics and the way and our own humble space in it. I just find her intensely profound. So she did manage to get to art school because she made a deal with her mom saying that she would love that she agreed to go to finishing school, to etiquette school. And so she did go to art school, and you can see that she learned how to draw and paint, etc. But her mom was really, really very mad at her when she found out that actually she never made it to the finishing school. She just did the art part. So her very first exhibition of her watercolors was in a tiny little art gallery above the movie theater back in Matsumoto when she was just about 23, and her best friend helped her put things up. But it was considered so crazy and so weird that no one came to see her art at all. No one recognized her talent and thought it was very strange. And then she, in the movie, they show her a lot in the movie too, and she says that Japan was very conservative and male dominated, and they didn't really get it, So every time, like, her mom would see her painting all these weird things, and her mom would just, even after she was a grown woman, would just take away her paints and canvases and just say, like, look at all these proposals, try and get married to a man, kind of a thing. So what happened then was she came across Georgia O'Keeffe's work, who approaches the natural world in a very fantastic and dreamlike way. And so she was inspired by it, and she wrote to Georgia O'Keeffe and sent her watercolors. So to the left, you'll see the Black Iris, which actually was the only piece of work that she did get to see while she was in Japan. And it really affected her, and she studied a little bit about Georgia O'Keeffe too. So she wrote to Georgia O'Keeffe and asked her, like, how was she, what she needed to do as an artist in a world that was so difficult for, like, to be an artist. And Georgia O'Keeffe was old back then, and she'd already moved to New Mexico. And basically, she told her that she thought to the right. The artwork to the right is one of the watercolors that she sent, that Kusama sent to O'Keeffe. And O'Keeffe thought it was really interesting and suggested that she should go to New York and try and show her work and be unafraid to show her work. So what Kusama did was she moved to New York back in 1957 to pursue her dream. Before doing that, she burnt about 2,000 of her paintings because she just said she just knew she was going to do better once she came to the promised land. Oh, maybe I did that too soon. And of course, it was really, really difficult for her, even though she did finally manage to get shown here and there. Georgia O'Keeffe did really try to help her too. She went right up to the oh gosh, and I've forgotten what's the name of the tallest building back then, the Empire State Building, yeah. And she went there and she made a promise to herself that she would conquer New York in the art world, and she would do everything that she could. And so, but you know, she was rejected everywhere, even by women curators. She wasn't taken seriously, she wasn't noticed. And you know, not only was she a woman, and you know, collectors didn't want to buy women's art, they didn't want to spend a lot of money. Museums didn't want to show her art. Like, not only was she a woman, she was Japanese. And then to be noticed, she started wearing kimonos because of the fetishizing of Asian women and the mysterious East. So you know, she did start getting noticed, but she was even castigated for that. It was like, you know, no matter what she did, she was criticized. She had very little money, but she painted every single day because that was the only thing that really made her feel like her life was worthwhile. And of course, she persevered because she persevered so much. She quickly made a name for herself with her large-scale immersive paintings and installations. And the movie very beautifully says all the crazy things that she did to be relevant and to be seen. And soon her installations featured the repetitive patterns and dots, which of course were very much, you know, sometimes they just focused on the fact that they were patterns and dots. But of course, it was a lot about her and her place in the universe and being subsumed and completely immersed into nature. And she did a lot in the abstract expressionist world, and her art also traversed various different styles. And her works began to gain attention for the originality and net. So everything from nature inspired her. And here is where I go here. So when she was flying, she looked down and she saw the ocean from the plane. And basically she saw overexpanding nets in the various patterns of the waves. And so that came to one of her signature style of making infinity net paintings. And she began that, so it was the origin of that. And she began that in 1959. And these paintings are characterized by their repetitive, intricate patterns resembling nets. And she would create these works by repeating simple brush strokes across a canvas. It would be all undulating, immersive, but it also had the 3D effect very much, like it had a lot of texture. This approach was groundbreaking, and it contributed to the development of like minimalistic, abstract expressionist art back then. What was also really very interesting was soon that she found herself, you know, she was soon now exhibiting in various places, but many prominent artists copied her work, including Andy Warhol. And the movie shows very beautifully what that was. So, you know, Andy Warhol immediately became very rich and famous. And then there were other artists whose names I hadn't heard, but apparently back then they were really big. And they became like instantly famous. And she became so depressed and reclusive to have a work copied like that, that she even tried to kill herself. And just, you know, to like go away and try and seek solitude. But once when she threw herself out the window, her fall was like she didn't break her neck. I think she fell on a bicycle, which kind of saved her life. And she just thought that this was a new lease of life. Suddenly she began being noticed everywhere, and she exhibited everywhere, including in Europe. And then, of course, the movie talks a lot about what she did there to be remembered. This amazing thing called the Narcissus Garden, that in the 1960s, she went to the, I want to say Venice Biennale, and she took 1,500 mirrored balls and sold it one by one in a very short time. So she like subverted the art form and basically tried to say that why couldn't she sell her art? If you can sell ice cream and you can sell hot dogs, she should be allowed to sell her own art that way, and so that it's accessible to everyone can sing. She then expanded her practice to include performance arts and happenings. And then her art performances also incorporated a lot of nude participants. etc. And it challenged the social norms and taboos. And then right then, the Vietnam War, etc., and drafting became a big thing in the U.S. And soon she became very well known. She led the anti-war demonstrations in New York. Thousands of people joined her, and basically they shed their clothes. What she said was that the human beings were too beautiful to just kill and get killed. And she also didn't like what the US was doing in Vietnam and in Asia. So she got into a lot of trouble, basically, and especially after Nixon came into power. Around that time her work went into this transformative turn where she did this infinity mirror room, which pretty much is a room with mirrors all around, and a lot of her colored, balls, and there were various. She went to a psychologist and psychiatrist and kind of found out what was. She had a lot of these mental issues, and she took whatever her issue was and converted it into art. And so you'll see a lot of these phallic, like soft phallic images, etc. It's very, very interesting, but it's done in such a way in the infinity room that when you go in, you're like surrounded all around by it, and it's literally you're in this universe of infinity of various things happening, and who are you, the person, the individual, something like that. At least that was my understanding of it. So these installations were like mesmerizing, immersive experience, and it blurs the boundaries between the self and the infinite. There's even something called the obliteration room, which I will tell you to see it in the movie because I don't think I can really describe it very well. So anyway, she moved back to Japan in the early 1970s because it was very difficult for her, and she was not being taken seriously again. So she started from scratch all over again in Japan. Now in Japan, she was considered to be this very scandalous woman, hungry for hungry for attention and publicity. And they were really very cruel towards her. So she struggled a lot with her mental issue. Finally, she managed to find a mental institution, a psychiatric institution in Tokyo that did a lot of art therapy. And she, to this day, since the 1970s, has chosen to live there. So she feels very safe in the mental institution, where she found that she felt safe enough to be able to do her artwork again. And to cut a very long story short, she was recognized for the brilliant artist that she was helped by a few people who kind of recognized her, and she made it back to the Venice Biennale in 1989 or 1993. And she also made it back into the US scene in 1989. And she's been famous ever since. So her influence on contemporary art is immeasurable. Her work has inspired generations and generations of artists, and they continue to captivate everyone. Oh, did I go backwards? So I just wanted to show that this is just a picture of us on the 31st of December. You can see me up there taking the picture. So all this is from the mirrors. I was, opposite to that. That's my husband here, my son and his girlfriend. This was us. So obviously not part of the movie, but I just thought it'd be interesting to show you. And then this is another part of a sculpture where there are a lot of these dots and then pumpkins. She wrote a lot of poetry, and there's a lot of connection with poetry. A lot of nature goes into her art, etc. So there is just a movie trailer. There's a lot more, so much more about her. I think I've just barely touched the surface. But there's this movie trailer, and I don't know if I can do, but if I can, I'll do it. Otherwise, I also have it open in a different one. Let's see if it works. Come on, you can do it. Never mind. I don't believe you can hear anything. So I'm going to stop sharing and share the other thing where I have already have it open. Let me just get it. Escape. Oh gosh. Where are you? Okay. Here I am, and I'm going to try and, can you see it?
No, not yet. Yeah, I can.
All right.
No, I don't see anything.
One. Did you now?
Yeah.
Yes. Yeah.
Yep.
There's no sound with it.
There you go. That was it. Any questions? I'm sorry, it was like a very bare scratching of the surface of the movie and an amazing and prolific artist. But that was it.
Thank you for sharing that.
Thank you so much. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, I think her work is just extraordinary. I love her work. It's incredible. I'm just always just blown away when I see her
I know.
work, just her use of color and it's like there's nothing you can say. It's incredible. She's incredible. Absolutely.
So true. And when you realize that it all stands for something, that there's so much meaning and depth behind everything that she does, which has been abstracted into simplicity, that's what like really like gets to me. I was like, oh my goodness, how brilliant is she? And of course, the movie also shows the various trajectory that our art's gone through. You know, right now we know a lot about the circles and her infinity rooms, etc. But there's just so much more to her art that is just fabulous, fabulous.
I know. It's like how she incorporates herself. It's almost like
yes,
just an artist or visual artist. Like she's a designer and everything in between.
So true.
I mean, it's like it permeates her whole world, you know, herself, the environment, everything. It's just like, it's just incredible. It's just incredible when when I see how she places herself in her own art. It's incredible.
So well done. Yeah, she would do that too. Like, you know, like she would go to places to be seen, and when they would ask her to like go away, she would like cast aside a kimono, there'd be leotards underneath, and she would throw herself into the art and be photographed wildly. And she got recognized that way, but it wasn't just the show, it wasn't just performance. There was more to her than beyond the performance. Even when I went to the SF MoMA, the way her work was depicted, especially the Pumpkin Room, I maybe it was just me, I detected a little bit of patronizing I don't know, language out there, and I was slightly annoyed, but maybe I was wrong. I feel like to this day she is not taken completely seriously. You know, she's seen as someone who made it big because she was so outrageous and so this and so that, and even the art world to this day, again, I could be wrong, but that was how I
Yeah.
felt. Yeah.
I feel like she should be incorporated into film. And when I think of what's his name, the guy who did Beetlejuice, the animation,
Tim Burton.
Yeah, Tim Burton. I had seen his stuff at MoMA. They had a whole thing on him, his trajectory, and I was just thinking about her in juxtaposition to him, and there's just such worlds that she's just incredible. She's incredible. I'm kind of surprised that she hasn't been able to do something like that, in a sense.
So true. I mean, she's only 95. Maybe she'll get there one day. I was so shocked when I saw it. So there's they show the evidence in the movie about how other artists copied from her, and I was so shocked because I had no idea. And how can you blame her for becoming all reclusive and crazy and thinking that everyone's trying to steal from you? This is where I kind of remembered when you were talking about Camille Claudel too, Jody, right? That when you're so intense and so much into your art, and that's your whole life, and you're being stolen from and not given the due that you should be, how will it not change you? How will it not make you, for lack of a better word, not what the world sees as normal behavior kind of thing? And you just want to squirrel yourself up somewhere and secretly do something. But then in her case, in case of Kusama, she found that safe space. And in the movie, you'll also see that there were a couple of people who understood her, and her best friend Akira, whom I don't think I referenced at all. And then this other person who was an art commissioner who kind of saw who she was and decided, no, she needs to be shown. And that was just amazing. It's a beautiful movie.
Your account made it sound like her suicide attempt led to her becoming recognized. Was that
I don't think it led to her being recognized. I think it probably, by then she was already in museums. She was already being exhibited alongside all these greats. But I think maybe it gave her greater notoriety, for better word, because when she went back to Japan, she does say that when she went back to Japan in the early 70s, she thought Japan was 100 years behind, socially, culturally. She definitely doesn't say that it is like that today, but back in the 1970s. So I just think that she was so disheartened that she just wanted to end it all, and it just happenstance that she fell on a bike, and she must have got hurt, but then her life was saved. And the movie, at least this documentary doesn't change. It doesn't really address that. I think one of the curators of the movie, I thought I was paying attention, but I believe one of the curators and a big fan of hers, the one who's being responsible to make this movie. So it is like a panegyric for her. It is full of praise for her and from her point of view. But I think by and large it's accurate,
Yeah, I just wanted to say that I also went to the SF MoMA to see her exhibit. I was fascinated, and I also visited the Infinity Rooms. So one fact that I read about her is that she has a special attachment to pumpkins.
Yes,
Like she constantly uses pumpkins as a symbol, but I forgot the reason, like why he chose pumpkins. I'm not sure whether the movie talks about that.
The movie doesn't get into the pumpkins at all. I just put the pumpkins in there because I saw it too, and that picture was actually photographs I took from my iPhone. And I know that she composed some poetry connected with it, with nature and space and pumpkin and I don't know when exactly she did that. Perhaps that particular like really, really large sculpture was done after the movie was made, but I don't know because she's so prolific still.
Yeah.
Thank
you.
It's welcome. It's my I hope I did it justice. I know those who present, at least for myself, I go from at one point I try to be as objective as possible, but then I just really get into these artists and then they mean so much to me, and it's like a little more emotional than I would like it to be. I'd like to be very like objective, but hey, I'm human, so it's the way it is. So anyway, any other questions?
It's not really a question. I was just going to add, oh wait, somehow I've lost my screen. Am I still there?
You're there. I can see you.
I guess I'll give up on this. I was trying to send a photo to the chat. When I was in Bilbao last summer, they happened to have a huge show, a lot more of her works than I'd ever seen anywhere. So that was lucky. But the thing that wowed me the most was the sort of shallow water moat that goes all around the Guggenheim, the building itself is this amazing work of art on the river. They had put red dots floating all through it. And it was just such a beautiful translation of her spirit into the actual world. I thought it was really creative.
That's awesome. That's sure.
I'll try to send you a picture later.
Sure.
Okay, so we had one person left then. This is so hard when I can't see the there. Martha, you were going to, I know you had to leave, right? Come on at 5:30.
I have to leave in a couple of minutes. Unfortunately, I have an in-person meeting at 6 o'clock. Yeah. But I
did somebody, I saw somebody had on their on the screen Corinne Boulwart. Did somebody have something to present with that? Because there was a really gorgeous image of all these doors, all these different doors. Is that ringing a bell with anybody? KARINEPOLWART.
We don't see anything.
No, I don't know where you're looking.
It was while somebody else was talking, and they had, and I thought, oh my gosh, that's why I wrote it down, because I'd never seen that artist before. So if somebody had a presentation on this artist that had the beautiful doors, I don't want to take any of their space or time. Is that?
I think probably the doors are the cover image of the song that Lilia planned to play for us, but wasn't successful in doing that. I think that's the cover image of the music. Yeah, there were a lot of colorful doors on that image. Yeah, I think that was probably it.
I love that.
Suman, before you leave, look in the chat. I managed to get the picture there.
Okay.
Oh wait, I put it in the wrong.
I will send you.
It was really beautiful. I wrote it down.
Yeah, I'll send the YouTube image, but I don't know the author of this. I deeply apologize. I also probably need to go, but I still have also one like our local church meeting, but I really have like this a little bit time to change. Okay, I apologize, but I thought it would be like okay.
No, it's okay. We always struggle with the timing on this thing.
Oh yeah,
Thank you very much. That was really interesting to. Sorry if I was very pushy with my ideas. I apologize. Sometimes I will get passionate about ideas as we go around the art, so I can stop.
It's so beautiful. Oh my gosh, it looks amazing, Jody. Thank you for sharing.
I finally figured it out. Yes, thank you for the presentation. I learned more, even though I'd seen that show. Who can stay? And we'll, Martha, I don't know how would you like to buy, or we could start.
Thank you.
Were you going to talk about movies that you found to be visually compelling? Is that the art component?
I just heard art and movies, and then I just kind of free associated. I didn't really pay attention to the brief, and I'm really sorry, because I told Ada, yeah, I'll be an observer. But then as I was thinking about art and movies, I realized that there were a couple movies that had changed the trajectory of what was possible in my life. And I was curious if other people had had that experience and what movie that would be and what particular part they connected with. And it was, just to go very quickly, is the first one was I was about 5 or 6 years old, and I got to see Pinocchio on the big screen. And the beginning images were of Geppetto's workshop. And there were all these things on the shelves. And they panned across, and this is animation. And I was just mesmerized as a small child to see all these images, and it was very disorganized. Things didn't one go with another. It was just his workshop. And suddenly I was like, you can do this as an adult. This is something that's possible in the adult world that was certainly not possible in my world. And it just resonated so clearly with me that the world was so much more beautiful and full of interesting things than I ever knew before. So suddenly I'm having this epiphany about how things are going on from this animated series of images. And it kind of resonates to what I do in my life now. And I wouldn't have guessed that that was possible, but through the artistry and me being open at the time, they did. And then the other one was completely different because it was just like a romantic comedy from the 1950s. And I saw it in my early 20s, and it talked about what happens after death. And it was a new idea and a new experience. And so they just simply presented it in a film that kind of was related to the plot, but also it was kind of just an aside. You could tell it wasn't like an author says, oh, now I get a chance to share something important. And that stayed with me too. And I played it for my mother later when she was there with her friend who had breast cancer in both breasts, and my mom was in between lung cancer diagnoses. So it's just, I think I wanted to share that movies can change a person, just like when you go into a museum and you really connect with a piece of art and you leave the museum transformed. So thanks for letting me share that. And I appreciate all the work everybody's put into their presentations and how wonderful they were. Thank you very much.
That's a nice concluding summary of why we love movies. What, you didn't say the name of the romantic comedy?
Houseboat.
Oh.
Grant and Sophia Loren, and it's where he's sitting with his son on the side of the houseboat, and the son asks him, Dad, what happens when we die? Yeah.
I'm a fan of old movies like that. I'll have to look it up. It's probably on YouTube at that moment anyway. Did anybody have anything they want to add before we wrap up? Or does anybody else want to share a movie that they felt had such an impact in their life? I can't say that one comes to my mind as changing the trajectory of my life, but I definitely think they expand in the same way that visual arts do. I mean, they are a visual art with music and lots of other aspects to them. So I did try at some point to make a list of like top 10 movies, right? And I found that ones that had strong visuals, other than my all-time favorite, Some Like It Hot, which is an old romantic comedy, were dominated the list. So I suspect for most of us, it would be something with meaning or visuals like that. Anybody else have one they want to share before we sign off?
I haven't thought about it. So it's hard to, so I guess not, because it would have popped up immediately, but I do remember first time I went to the cinema, so like, because you're yeah. Thank you for adding that.
Yeah, this was.
And
Thank
for
you,
doing
everyone,
this. This
for
is
the
a-
hard work. Yeah. And I guess the next one will be in the fall, and maybe it'll be Art and Madness, or or we put off the one about the horrific in art for the Halloween last year.
Yeah, we wanted to do a Halloween special.
Yeah.
Can it be at my house then?
Yeah, with a potluck. Share Halloween candy.
No, it will be up to months.